Hey girls, welcome to our first session video. I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've recorded myself just talking into the computer. These days I'm on Zoom all day, but there are people on the other side. So I apologize if I'm a bit all over the place, but I promise I'll get better as quickly as I can. So let's dive into what we have for this month. For this month, we're going to start talking about what's in a website. How do we make one? What goes into it? This whole year, we're going to focus on the three languages that make up the bulk of many sites you'll find online. HTML, CSS, and a third one called JavaScript that we'll talk about a few sessions from now. So for our first two, we'll talk about them briefly, and then we'll get into a deeper discussion in a minute. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. We use HTML to describe the elements that go on our website. So text, or images, or lists, or many more complicated elements over time. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. That allows us to set styles, so colors, fonts, backgrounds, animations, anything like that, making it pretty and making it interesting to look at. No one wants to come to a page that's just black text on a white background. It can also help us lay out our HTML elements, just remember the pieces that make up the website, on the page if we need help with that. Images, again, like I said, as part of the HTML elements aspect, they're just another type of element you can add, you can style, and for most of the time that we're going to use them, you can find them online using something like Google Image Search or anywhere that you would normally go out and look for images that you're trying to include of things that you enjoy or things that you want to add to make your website more interesting. I will note here, and you will see it later, and I will note again because it's an important distinction and a very easy mistake to make. When you go and you find an image that you want to use, you're going to right-click on that image and select the Copy Image Address option, not Copy Image, because what we actually need is the place where the image can be found, not the image itself, and we will use that in our code, which you'll see below. Before we dive any deeper into the two languages, I want to talk about how we're going to practice this over the course of the year. In order to have the easiest time as we first start out, we're going to use a web app called CodePen, which I love because it gives us the ability to have real-time updates. So you change something in your code, you want to see what a different font color looks like, or you want to see what a different size text would look like. You make the change and it's going to update it right away. It's a very easy way to make low-impact changes. And it also has a huge catalog of examples of things other people have built. This is a thing that even professionals will use to test out code really easily, again, because of the real-time update. It's very, very easy. And in some cases, create really intricate projects and then release the code and release the details of the project. So you can go in, find something that looks interesting, and look at the code that made it, which is a phenomenal way to learn. We do have an account. You'll see the username and the password right here. So at codepen.io, you can go in and you can log in, and then you can use this dashboard site to find your project if you want to show it to a friend or a family member at any time. You also can create your own account. Just make sure you have an adult come and help you set everything up. It's a free plan. It doesn't require a credit card or any identifying information besides just an email address. And there's directions down here if that is the route you want to go. But otherwise, we have fully unlimited use up here, and so you can create as many projects as you want as long as you save them as something you can come back and find, which is also something we'll talk about. So now, before we actually look at any significant code, let's dive in and try to figure out the relationship between HTML and CSS. Put this out of the way. So let's pretend that our website is a home. HTML is everything that makes up the home. We need walls, we need floors, we need windows, we need furniture, we need some art. We would have nothing if we no HTML. It would be a blank web page no matter how many styles, no matter how many paint cans you try to put at an empty lot, it's not going to be a painted house. CSS is what styles the house. It is the paint. It is artwork. It is the pattern on the couch. It is all of the things you've chosen to make the house interesting. Without it, you'd have a house full of stuff, but it'd be very boring stuff, so we don't want that. We build our HTML using what are called nested elements, nested groups of elements. So the same way a house is a nested group of items, our HTML starting tag and ending tag is the property our house is on. The body starting and ending tag, everything inside of that is everything inside the walls of the house. Then you have a P tag, which is a paragraph tag, could be your plain old couch. You have another one, it's your plain old chair. Then you decide you want to have some art on the walls. You have a collage of art. So you have a list of 3 different pieces of art that would all be grouped together. As you can see, there's natural indents as you go that kind of keep everything organized for you, which is very nice. CodePen does that for you automatically. So it's usually a very safe bet that if you're looking at your code and it's not nicely indented like this, something is wrong somewhere and CodePen can't figure out how to fix it for you. So that's a very good immediate second, take a second to pause and check that out. You'll notice, like I said, that every element has a closing tag. So we have here matches with here, here matches with here, all the way down. Then you even have single ones that have to open and close on the same line. This is because we have to tell our HTML, we have to have HTML tell the browser, we're closing the group of what we just did, or we're closing the element we just finished. It needs to know that this is the paragraph and there's not more information we need to stuff into that paragraph that's down here. The couch is the couch, the chair is the chair. They don't overlap. And then we could use CSS to style some of the things. So if we wanted all the walls in our house to be blue, roughly speaking, we take the body element from our HTML, and in our CSS we say, okay, I want the HTML body element to have a background color of blue. If we applied that to a site that had this HTML, the background of that site would turn blue. Perfect. If we wanted our couch and chair to be gigantic and green, we could increase the font size a whole bunch, and we could change the color to green. And then we'd have a humongous couch that probably no one would be able to fit on. But there we are. So you can sort of get an idea of how those two have to work together, because one without the other just doesn't make anything nearly as interesting as we would like it to be. So now I want to pause for a second before we get into some actual real code and go over and show you CodePen. So in here, once you log in at codepen.io, either with our group credentials or with ones you create yourself, you're going to come to this page. Sometimes it brings you to the trending page. Sometimes it will actually just bring you to a library page. But it's really just trying to bring you to some kind of a summary. You are going to be interested in one of 2 things. If you're here to create the pen for the first time, which we are all going to do now, then over here you'll see a create and you'll see pen. You'll click that. It's going to bring you into this right here. If any of your parents, friends, or family are programmers by trade or by hobby, they will enjoy the joke that comes across here. There's a different one each time. If they are not, they will not enjoy it, and even the ones that enjoy it won't really enjoy it. The important things here, so you have a section called HTML, you have a section called CSS. We now know what both of those are, and they do, so look at that. You also have a section down here that's called JS. That's going to be your JavaScript. We don't need to worry about it for now. They do give you the option to click this and say minimize it if you wanted to give yourself more space here, but it doesn't actually do anything besides give more space. You also can drag these up and down, which is sometimes helpful if you're working in your HTML or if you're working in your CSS, to give yourself more screen space if you need it. If you have an issue with the way this looks, this is my favorite way to lay it out, with the HTML and the CSS on the side and then your website portion right here. There are people that would prefer to have them on the other side. If you use this change view, it gives you the 3 possible options. I find this one to be the hardest because then your website is just very, very short. But if you enjoy it, feel free. The first thing we do as soon as we create a new pen, super, super, super important, is come up here It's going to say untitled. There's a little pencil. Name it something you will remember, because we all have our pens saved to the same account. There's a search feature, but I assure you, you want to be able to use the search feature, not browse page by page through all of the possible pens looking for yours. That's much less fun. So save it something that's easy to remember so you can always go back in and search. And then you'd begin adding your code into both of these. So now let's go back over and we can actually look at the code. We can ignore the errors that I'm receiving here. So HTML, this is the first HTML we can look at. This is basically very similar to what you saw up here in terms of the actual structure of it. It's got some paragraph tags. It's got an unordered list full of a couple elements. In this case, we also have an image, but it's pretty basic still. You can still see the indentation. You can see that now that we add some actual text, it makes a little more sense. So we have a hi, my name is blank as our header. That's the thing we'd want everyone to know right away when they get here. Then we have some paragraph tags that kind of talk about us a little bit, or introduce something like explain the picture we're about to show, or explain some of our favorite things, whatever the list is going to be of. So if we took all of this code right here and we brought it over into CodePen and we put it in our HTML section, which you can see right here. So here's where I have the image that's in there. Open this up just a little bit so it looks a little more recognizable. Then you can see we have all this, and this is what it's going to give us. So this is great, but this is really boring looking, right? Nobody wants just a white background with black words. The dog is adorable. I'll absolutely grant you that, but this doesn't really inspire someone to stick around and really read all about you or about what you have to say. And so that is where we come back and we bring in our CSS, which is right here. Again, you can see, just a reminder, that this is where you would put the HTML code. And then when we come down here into the CSS, we can see very easily, kind of like we had up in the example with the metaphor, that we have the body element in our HTML. We can have a body designation in our CSS. In this case, I'm not only just setting the background color like I was before, I'm also setting the font family, which is going to be the same as if you're creating a document of any kind for school or for something else. You would choose the font of your Google document or your Word document or your whatever you're writing it in. You would choose a font for that. You could also, here you have, remember our header, our H1 wants to be the thing that announces us. So we want it to be bold and we want it to be bigger than everything else. So we change the font size and we change the font weight. Again, don't worry right now, especially in paying attention to these specific things, because there's a whole reference point for what all of them are and what they do. Our paragraph tags, again, we want them to stand out a little, so we give them a white font color so that they'll stand out against our background. We make them a little bit bigger than standard, but not as big as our H1. And then for the image, we, in this case, specify a height, just because I like knowing how big it's going to be. If you go find an image online and bring it over and put it into your CodePen, you have no idea. It could be twice the size of the screen, and then your whole screen is a picture, and that's just a little bit silly. So now if we take all of that CSS that we just have, and we come back over to CodePen, we see our arrow and it says put this code goes here, come back in here, we add that back, and now we have at least a little bit more of an interesting thing to look at. So we've got this purple shade background color, we've got some white text, we've got a different font, we've got a little bit more a predictable size for our image, and just overall, you know, it looks a little bit nicer. There's still a whole lot more we can do though, for sure. But for now, this is a very good start. So if we come back, those are the two getting started things that we have. However, there are plenty more options for things that you can add to your CSS. You can do things like text decorations, you can add underlines, you can add strike throughs, all kinds of things like that. You can add background images where you specify the URL to something and your whole background, instead of being a color, could be a bunch of tiny pictures of cats. Highly recommend. You could put borders around elements and tell it how big and what type and what color. You can change the way text is aligned on the page, whether it's left or center or right. Another reminder here with an actual photo, if you find a picture online to use as a background or an image, right-click and choose Copy Image Address to get the URL. Do not use copy image. And you'll see up here, this right here is the actual source. This was the copied image URL. And we use that to specify the source of the image that we want to have show up. Let's go back down here. Again, there's an endless number of options, truly, or seemingly so, for CSS choices. So here are some other font families you could try out. Here are some other ways you can use borders to have them dotted and dashed, doubled up. You can do different types of text decorations, like I said, strike-throughs or underlines. You can also do things like put shadows on your text. You can align differently. If you're ever looking to really dive in and get super creative, there is a link I provided here to this site, which has all of these many different things with explanations. So even just this border page, which is before, over here, here's a couple types of borders you can have. Well, in here, they have all the ways to put them on all the different sides. They can be rounded, they can be grooved or ridged or hidden. They can be everything like that. And then they also have examples for what that should look like. So inset makes it kind of look like it's supposed to be a text box, even though it's not. Double has two super tiny lines. So there's lots of options. You can always go and get creative. That's absolutely awesome. And then do one thing here on this last page, and then I'm going to talk about how you can go ahead and get started on your own, so that you know where to start. Because obviously not being in person, that's the one thing that's a little bit tough to know where you're supposed to go. So I'm going to do my best to make sure you have a clear idea. So the very last page here, this is going to be the last page of any of these handouts anytime we have a new element of any kind that's introduced. In this case, all of our elements are new, obviously, because this is the first time we're seeing all of this. So we have an H1 tag, like I've kind of been saying. This is a header, so you only want one of these on your website. This is a person that stands outside your house and yells hello as loud as they can to anyone who visits. This is the main takeaway that you want someone to get. Paragraph tags, you could have a bunch of those. This is where you put anything that's normal. Your house is full of furniture, so you can have as much of this as you want. Anytime you want to separate out something into its own little space, give it a paragraph tag and put that text in there. Lists, so UL is an unordered list, which is just a container of elements, of items. The unordered list, inside of it, like we saw above, has a collection of list items. So these, open and closed, go inside of the element. Everything you want to put in your list gets its own element to go in there. And then images. So again, open and closed. This lets you add any kind of picture, and you use the SRC, which stands for source value, to tell the website where to go get that picture and display it. If you use a source value that doesn't actually exist, it's just going to give you a box, usually with an X in it or something like that. And that's how you'll know that that picture is no longer available, and you got to go chase down another one. So that's it for HTML. Like I said, anytime we have new ones introduced, we will have a bunch. There will be this page at the back that kind of continues, right? A running appendix. You can always go back and look if you forget what something does. A lot of these elements are named pretty intuitively, like P for paragraph. Some of them are a little, or image, some of them are a little bit less so, and so sometimes it's helpful to have the reference. The last thing that I think is worth noting, because it lets you get nice and creative, and that's really fun, is what colors you can use. So obviously, you saw in my pen, I had two different things. I had a paragraph where the color was listed as white. Then I had the body where the background color was listed as pound 666699, which are obviously very different. So the paragraph, color white, falls into this first option, regular color words. There are options built into CSS for colors: blue, green, white, lime, fuchsia, olive, maroon, aqua. There are about 140 of them. You can see a list right here. actually open it so you can see they do a very nice job of showing you not only the name you can use, but it actually does have a corresponding hex value as well. And you can glance down through here and see if you are a Dodger Blue or a Goldenrod, a Honeydew. Some of the names are very interesting and not things that I necessarily would have thought needed to be reserved names, but there we are. The second option for literally endless possibilities is to use a color picker tool. So this is my favorite one right here. And again, it's linked right here. So you can come in and if you open the PDF on your computer, you can click all these links directly because this is just the same PDF that's being sent out. HTMLcolorcodes.com I love because I think it's both fun and helpful. So you come in and you can drag this all around here, then you drag this here, and when this is the color that you want, then you take whatever comes up in this first box next to this pound sign or hashtag sign, as I've now had to call it because nobody knows what pound is. You take that, and when you come into here, you can see where you have the background color. I can change that and paste in what I just copied out of there, and then I get this new seafoam green colored background, which doesn't look great against the white, but if I were going to stick with it, I would probably change the color of my font. Maybe to something like navy blue. But that is HTML color codes, which I enjoy very much. So that is the end of the handout. The very last thing I wanted to point out before talking about how to get started for yourself is at the end of every one of these pages, we have this link to girlscodeclublancaster.github.io. It takes you to a site that looks like this. You'll recognize the purple background. I have a type. This is basically our virtual home online. So this is always the best place to go for reference for adults about the dates of upcoming virtual sessions. It will always have all of the handouts for previous sessions listed here. So if you ever need to go back and reference something and you can't find the email that had it attached, you can come in here, and this right now would take you directly to the PDF that I've been referencing this whole time, which has links and everything else right in it, as well as the code. It also has contacts for myself, Emily Landis at the Science Factory, and the Girls Code Club Lancaster email to send questions and things like that. As I said in the email, if you have any questions while you're working through any of this, normally I'm used to walking around and being able to answer them when you raise your hand, but just raise your hand virtually, send an email, let me know what your project is saved under, what name, and explain the issue you're having a little bit, and I will go in directly to the project, take a look, and see what I can find out, and then send you back some suggestions for how you might be able to fix it. Definitely don't wait for the virtual sessions for those. Absolutely send them sooner because we want the virtual sessions to be full of sharing everything that everyone has done and other discussions that we can all have together about big things. We'll be available for one-on-one help during the sessions if you'd like it, but I don't want anyone to feel that they have to miss out on any of the session to do that when they could have sent a question sooner. So please feel free to do that. And then lastly, in order to practice or to get started, obviously we walked through how to go in and pick create new pen, change the name to your first name, last initial, or something else that you'll definitely remember. I find it's easiest to do one of two things. Either create like a split screen, two browser windows that are each open about halfway with the PDF that has the code and with your CodePen page, or print out the PDF and then make a little stand, something like that, put it up next to your computer so that you can go back and forth and basically type as you're looking at this. I find the easiest thing to be line by line, copy the HTML into the HTML section, copy the CSS into the CSS section, and then when you have everything there, you've got a solid starting place. You know it all works. You know that you have this right here. Obviously, very little of this applies to you aside from maybe that you like this dog, but you've got a starting point. Then you can go in and you can change colors. You can change font sizes. You can decide that you want the header to be absolutely ginormous, or you want it to be absolutely tiny, or something like that. So you can start playing with a point of it works, and now you can make changes. It's helpful that you type it all out because you start to understand it more as you're typing it, but then you also have a good place to go in and experiment. Likewise with this, you can go in and you can customize all of this. What we're really hoping from the first page that we all get to show off, or as many of you as would like to show off at the first set of meetups, is learning about you. Tell us about your favorite things. Tell us some pictures, show us some pictures of places you've been that you like to go, or hobbies you have, interests, things you like to do, stuff like that, because it's important that we all get to know each other as we're going on this 9-month adventure together. Okay, phew, that is a lot. I understand it's a lot to take in all at once. Please watch this video as many times as you feel you need to. If you have any questions, like I said, please just email them. I am more than happy, myself and our other instructor, Yunji, are more than happy to take a look through and help you as much as we can. In the meantime, good luck. Can't wait to see what you've built and chat with you in a few weeks. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.